Exhaust fans are a fairly simple part of your house, but at the same time, they can have their fair share of problems. So in this video, we're going to talk about different problems that you might be experiencing with your exhaust fan and some ways that you can fix them. All right, so first things first, if your fan simply won't turn on, then it's most likely not getting power. So the first thing I would do would be to go to the breaker box and make sure all of the breakers are on and not off. I'd also specifically check the breaker for the bathroom, and then I would turn it off and then back on again, because sometimes these breakers will trip and it looks like they're still on. So by turning it off all the way and then turning it back on, you can be sure power is flowing through your panel to that area. If that doesn't fix the problem, the next thing I would do is to check the switch. So go back to your breaker panel, turn off the power to your breaker, and then go back and remove the faceplate for your light switch, and then remove the switch. Once you remove the switch, you're going to look for a couple of different things. One, you want to make sure that all the connections are tight, especially if it's a backstab installation. You want to make sure that the wires are pushed in all the way into the back of the light switch and they're not loose. If they are loose, you want to make sure to relocate the wire to a side terminal and tighten it down properly. If you see any burn marks either on the switch or the wiring itself, then you probably have a short somewhere inside of that electrical box. So it's important to remove any damaged wire and replace a damaged light switch with one that's brand new. You can also have a light switch that looks totally fine, but actually has a problem inside of it too. So what I would recommend here is to go ahead and swap out the switch with one that's brand new or one that you know is working. Also, if you can't find a problem at the light switches, you'll want to check the electrical connections at the exhaust fan as well. So in this case, you would go up and remove the exhaust fan cover. You'll probably have to remove the motor as well in order to access the wiring. And then you'll probably have another cover over the wiring as well that you'll have to remove. Once that cover is removed, you should be able to see the wire connections that are going into that exhaust fan housing. Just make sure the wiring nuts are tight and that there aren't any loose connections, and also make sure that there isn't any kind of another issue like burned wiring up in that location. If it's not the breaker and it's not the switch or any of the connections there, then it's probably going to be the fan motor. So what you can do in this case is simply remove the fan motor from the housing. And a lot of these fans have replacements that are available still from the manufacturer. You can either find these in a big box home improvement store or find a replacement online. If you can find a motor replacement and swap it out, that'll save you the trouble of having to go and replace the entire fan with a brand new one. If you have a problem with your bathroom being too hot in the summer or too cold in the winter, you may have an issue with air escaping from your exhaust fan. Now, there's a couple of reasons this might happen. One is you might have a missing damper. So this is a damper that's in an exhaust fan. I've removed it here, obviously. But what this does is it allows the exhaust fan air to push this door open and exhaust the air. And then once it's done, once the fan is turned off, then it closes automatically. And it prevents any air from coming back through this way. Now, sometimes these doors aren't present. If that's the case, then you're going to have a problem with air continuously flowing in and out from the outside. In order to check this, then the first thing I would do is to put my hand up to the exhaust fan to see if you feel a lot of hot or cold air coming through. If you do, I'd go ahead and remove the cover and then remove the fan motor itself to see if this door is present. If it's not, then you need to replace it. The other problem could be your exhaust duct isn't insulated, and if that's the case, then you'll probably want to go ahead and replace that with one that is insulated, or be sure to cover that duct up with insulation to help keep as much of the cold air or the hot air out of that bathroom space as possible. If your exhaust fan is too loud or too noisy, there could be a few different reasons why this is the case. So the first thing I would check is to make sure that the exhaust fan cover is fully secure and it's not loose in any way. If it is loose, it's going to rattle every time you turn on the motor, and that will cause a lot of excess noise. If it is loose, you'll want to either adjust the springs so they have enough tension or replace the exhaust fan cover completely. Sometimes exhaust fans that have lights built into them are not held in place by springs, and instead they're held in place by a rod with a nut at the end of the rod. So if you have an exhaust fan that has a light built into it or a light that's installed in it, make sure to check this part as well. Now, if you don't see a nut, then that nut may actually be behind the light bulb. So be sure to remove the light bulb and check to make sure all of the connection points or whatever the connection point is secure. Another problem that can cause excess noise is a motor can be worn out, and the bearings inside the motor might be worn to the point to where they're starting to cause extra noise. If that's the case, you can simply, again, swap out the motor just like you would in that previous scenario that I covered. Another thing that could be the problem is the fan blades themselves might be out of balance. It might have a problem with one of the blades. And if that's the case, it can also cause some excess vibration. So when you're replacing the motor, typically those have the fan blades attached to them as well. So again, your fix is going to be the same in either case. Now, if those things aren't the problem, then the reality is you probably just either have a really old fan or a fan that's just cheap and you probably need to upgrade it to a better model. So one way you can check to see if this is the case is once you take the cover plate off, you should have an area on the fan next to the motor that has a zone rating next to it. And if this zone rating is a 4 or above, it's probably going to be pretty loud. The zone rating is supposed to be a simple way to determine how loud a fan is supposed to be. And for every number it increments up, then you should have a perceived doubling in loudness. So if you have a fan that's rated for a 1 zone versus a 2 zone, the 2 zone fan should be twice as loud as the 1 zone. So that's basically the way that rating system works. If you're going to replace your fan, I would look for a zone rating of 2 or below because those are typically going to be the quietest fans you can get. If your fan runs continuously and it doesn't stop, there's a couple of different reasons this might be. One, you might have kids and they always forget to turn off the fan. At least that's the problem in my case typically. But if you don't have kids, or if your kids are really good about turning the fan off, then there are probably a couple other things that you might want to check out. If your fan runs continuously without stopping and you don't have a traditional on-off switch that controls it, then you probably have either an issue with a timer, if it's set with a timer on the wall, or the humidity sensor that's designed to turn the fan on and off automatically. If you do have a humidity sensor, there may be a way for you to adjust that humidity sensor to kick off at higher humidity levels, which should shut the exhaust fan off sooner. If adjusting it doesn't help though, you'll either have to replace the sensor or possibly even the exhaust fan itself. If you simply have a bad timer, then you can replace this easily by picking up a new one and installing it. If your exhaust fan tends to turn itself on and off randomly, then you might have one of two different things going on. One, if you have a humidity sensor, then the humidity value might be set improperly. So what you would do in that case is go to the humidity sensor and make some adjustments if possible. And two, if you don't have a humidity sensor or if that isn't the problem, then I would make sure the wiring at the switch isn't loose. So again, what you would do is go and turn off the power to the bathroom and then remove the faceplate from the light switch or the light switches, and then inspect the switch to make sure all the connections are tight. It's also important to check the connections in the fan housing as well. Sometimes you have to remove the motor itself in order to access the wire connections inside the fan. Typically, these wire connections are covered by a plate inside the housing, but once you remove that plate, you should be able to see where everything is wired up and make sure all of those connections are tight. If those things aren't the problem, you might have a faulty fan and you simply need to either replace the motor if you can and try that route, or replace the entire unit. If you have a problem with your fan not removing enough moisture from the bathroom after you take a shower and you see a lot of excess steam on the mirror and maybe even on the walls, then you're going to want to check out a few different things. The first thing I would check is make sure that your damper is not stopped or blocked in any way. So with this specific damper, I had a problem where someone had installed this fan with a screw behind the stamper door. So the entire time that this fan was installed inside of my ceiling in the bathroom, this door could not operate properly and it was basically sealed shut. So it didn't eliminate any steam or any excess moisture from the bathroom. It just ran continuously and it really didn't do anything. So the first thing I would check would be this door to make sure it functions properly. You should be able to push it open and it should close on its own fairly easy. The way you get to this again is to go ahead and remove the cover for your exhaust fan. You'll have to remove the blower motor itself as well, and then you should be able to see this just fine to be able to check it. If the damper on the inside is fine, the next thing you should do is check the exhaust port on the outside to make sure that's not clogged either. Sometimes these can have bird's nest or something else build up inside of it to where it's reducing or restricting the airflow. So if that's the case, then simply clean that out and you should be good to go. If neither of those things are the problem, you might have an issue with the duct itself. Either the duct might be clogged somewhere along the lines, or it might be crimped or kinked somewhere to where it's collapsed and it's restricting the airflow. So in order to check this, you'll probably have to go up into your attic space to make sure that that line is okay and clear and that nothing is blocking the airflow. Now, last but certainly not least, your exhaust fan just may simply not be big enough to exhaust enough air to take care of and control the moisture issue in your bathroom. And if that's your case, then the only option you have is to replace your exhaust fan that has a rating with a higher CFM, or cubic feet per minute of airflow. So the CFM rating really determines how much air that fan can move, that can exhaust to the outside of your home in any given time. And a lot of times you'll find fans that are rated for 50 CFM, which can be fine for a really small bathroom. But if your bathroom is larger, or if it has things like vaulted ceilings or some other features that make it to where it's harder to exhaust the air, you'll probably want to replace that with one that has a higher CFM value. In order to determine what your CFM rating is for your existing exhaust fan, again, you're going to want to remove that exhaust fan cover from your exhaust fan. And inside of that, you should see that value listed somewhere. It could either be stamped into the metal, or you might have a sticker that says what the CFM rating is. If that rating seems too low, especially for the space, you'll want to replace that exhaust fan with one that has a higher CFM value. Now, if you do have to replace your exhaust fan, it's a great opportunity to explore the different models and features that are available today. And if you want to go with something with a few more bells and whistles, like the one I installed here, I put together a complete review video on this specific exhaust fan, so you can go and check out this video next. Otherwise, if you're looking for instructions on how to simply replace an exhaust fan, no matter what model you have, I've also put together this video that you can go and check out. So hopefully one of those will continue to help you fix your issue. All right, thanks for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.